Yo, yo, yo. Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World, where I am trying my best not to sweat myself half to death because it is absolutely mental right now. My studio is also at the very top of this house, and so heat rises and all that kind of thing. And so it's just absolutely mental. This glass was basically full of ice about 5 minutes ago, and the ice is no more. So we're doing the best we can in this heat wave, record temperatures in the UK today. And so we will be having a hot conversation as well. We've got Orlando Gadea here, who is the VP of Global VP of Customer Experience Transformation at Stanley Black and Decker. Orlando has a wealth of experience in working on conversational AI solutions in the enterprise, and we're going to get into all of his lessons that he's learned over the years and share them with you in just one moment. But before we do that, I want to tell you about a workshop that we're running this week, which is a completely free workshop. If you would like to attend, go to vux.world/Cognigy, and the workshop is going to be facilitated by myself. And we're going to walk you through some steps in order to boost and build your CX maturity. We'll be looking at all kinds of things from your vision to your roadmap to the people and processes that you need to have in place and helping you scale what you do, whether it's from a conversational AI perspective or more generally from a CX perspective. We'll be helping you develop your maturity and understand the steps you need to take to do that as well. It's this Thursday. Go to vux.world/Cognigy, that's Cognigy, to find out more. We're also doing it on the 1st of September as well. So if you can't make this Thursday, you can definitely make September the 1st. So there you go. Please do join that, and we'll see you there. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome Orlando Gadea, who is, as I said, the Global VP of Customer Experience Transformation at Stanley Black and Decker. Orlando, welcome.
Hi, Gain. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. It's I imagine you've probably got air conditioning where you are, have you?
Yeah, for sure. With this heat wave.
Yes, you don't look half as hot and bothered as I am here, sitting driven with yeah, there you go. Anyway, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Yeah, why don't we kick off then? Maybe by telling us a bit about yourself, Orlando. You've got a lot of experience in working on conversational AI and chatbots and stuff like that. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about where your interest in this stuff came from, and then what led you into where you are now at Stanley Black and Decker.
Yeah, of course. Um, so part of Stanley Black and Decker, we were working on a transformation of our business, right? We were moving from selling tools to selling tools and experiences. We're working on improving our tools, adding value and understanding that it's not just about the steel, it's about everything that goes with a tool. We're not here to deliver the steels, we're here to enable builders to achieve results. So as we start adding this layer of experience into the tools, you start having the challenges on how do you deliver these experiences at the scale in a cost efficient way. And that's where conversational AI plays a very important role, because it makes yourself available on demand pretty much 24/7, at a speed that it's really hard to do without leveraging a conversational AI today.
Yeah, it's amazing how you know we've gone from the kind of like one-to-one relationship that businesses had, which was, if you go back far enough, it was in the marketplaces and in the physical stores and things like that, where it's one kind of shop assistant and one customer, to a place where it's one to many. With the birth of the internet and mobile, it means you can have one website or one mobile app used by thousands of people at the same time. But that didn't necessarily do what it was promised in all cases, did it? And so we've almost kind of slipped back now into a one-to-one relationship again, where call centers are being overrun, especially over your likes of COVID and even still today. And then, excuse me, live chat was implemented onto websites and into apps as a way of trying to, catch the fallout of the people that the website wasn't catering for, but even those live chat conversations are one to few at best. Like I've heard of some people that can handle like 10 live chat conversations at any one time, but I think that's very few and far between. And so it's almost like we've gone back to this one-to-one relationship with between companies and customers again, and conversational AI seems to be a way of getting back to that one-to-many kind of scale. I wonder if that's something that you've kind of observed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For for us, sort of the name of the game, it's trust, right? If you think about brand, what is brand but a representation of trust, right? You choose the products from brands that you trust, right? And this brand becomes the key element for you to decide on what is the product. And you trust things to which you have a good relationship. It used to be in the past that your relationship with the product that you are using was enough. But today, with technology and scale, you look for much more than that. And you look for great experiences. You look for great customer support. And what great customer support means is that your needs are fulfilled immediately without problems. You expect a seamless experience. And where it's one to one to many, we grow used to people, great companies, knowing us, anticipating our needs. And that's the challenge with the scale, right? And that's what we try to deliver. And that's where, again, technology plays a very significant role into helping you achieve that goal. But understanding that, back to the principle, what you are doing, it's building this trust with your customers, building this trust with the people that engage with you, and wholeheartedly try to make these connections and help them whenever they need help, support, whatever it's needed, to make sure that this trust that was initially put on you, you come through and you deliver these great experiences that people, to be honest, are now used to have, right?
Mm.
You hear about companies like Amazon or Uber, and that's now the new bar. Everybody expects the relationship between myself and any company I'm engaging with to abide to those high standards, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Um, so for Stanley Black and Decker, are you mostly kind of like in terms of how you sell your products? Is it mostly through? It's mostly through distributors and other retailers, is it? Or have you got also a direct sales channel?
It is mostly by channel partners, and when I say mostly, I mean 99.99%, right?
Mm,
It is through channel partners.
right. So where does your sort of demand come from the customer experience side of things? Then is it that people contact Stanley Black and Decker directly post purchase? Is it like a research kind of journey? Like, I wonder if you can talk us through some of the either the use cases or some of the conversations or some of the kind of contact that you do receive.
Yeah, for sure. It changes globally. It depends on where is the market and how are we going to market. But I would say that mostly you can divide in pre-sales questions, people asking you if this product would be the right for the application that they have in mind. A lot of people just flat out asking what kind of products should they buy. Then in areas where we have e-commerce, a lot of questions related to the transaction warranties and things like that. A lot of questions on where to buy our products. Those would be on the
Right.
pre-sale side. And then on the post-sale side, you have a lot of questions about, uh, where do you need to service your product, or warranty questions, or people asking where is the closest service center located, um, questions about products that are under warranty and stop working. But I would say that 70% of the questions, or 75% of the questions globally, are more oriented to the relationship, where to buy, what to buy, how to buy it, than warranty fulfillment.
Interesting. And when it comes to conversational AI, then, and building those language models and all that kind of stuff, it's typically easier to do that if you've got kind of confined conversations. You might start with a conversation which is, I don't know, returns for argument's sake, where there's defined inputs and defined information that you need to get from a customer in order for you to make that happen. Whereas when you're dealing with the front end of the customer journey, you're dealing with a lot of a much broader set of possibilities, should we say. I wonder if you can talk us through either some of the challenges or some of your observations around trying to tackle that broad, pre-sales questions and answers and stuff like that from a language model point of view.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. As you try to open new spaces, the questions can be completely different, right? And conversational AI works better in the case of these frequently asked questions, or these conversation flows that you can anticipate where are they going to go, right? For example, in the post purchase cycle, somebody asks you about the warranty, then most likely they have a product that it's not working. So you know that the steps are always very similar. What is your product? What's the serial number? You validate some steps, then you would normally issue a shipping label or some sort of direction for the customer. So it's more structured. But as you go into the pre-sales, there are just so many ways in one language to ask the same question. It's very hard to understand sometimes the intent behind the questions. So it becomes far less structured than when you're dealing on the post purchase sale. And that brings a huge complexity into how do we solve these problems. And there's something very important that sometimes I think gets understated when you are deploying AI, right? The bot will be as intelligent as you train him to be. What does that mean? You will design the conversation flows and you will feed information. But this information will come from two places, either your knowledge base or your system. So when I talk about knowledge base, most likely keep think about FAQs, right? Um, you can say, hey, what color is the drill? And your FAQ says it's yellow. Okay. Now, how big is your FAQ or your knowledge base? How big do they need to be effective? The first time we deploy a chatbot, we realized that 98% of the questions we were getting them for the first time. So our idea was like, okay, we're going to get all these questions and train our bot to really answer them. But then we realized that the same intent could be said in so many different ways that it was very hard for us to move into saying, okay, we're getting the same questions. It was always new and new questions. So what we tried to do with that was change a little bit the way that we organize the flows of these questions in the pre-sale to kind of like make it a little bit narrower so we could be more efficient, and then focus the value on the conversational AI on areas where we can connect with our systems. Let me give you an example. Especially for e-commerce, one question that you always get is, where's my product?
Mm.
That is a very easy question to answer from a conversational AI, because you have an integration with a shipping system that knows exactly what is the product. So you can act as an interface, right, between a user using voice, for example, and the system, and give the information. And in those cases that are complex in terms of integration, the bots work amazingly well.
Mm.
In areas where you need more with more open questions, so for example, um, what is the best tool to secure a screw? There are many possible answers, and there are many possible ways of asking the same question, especially internationally. If you think in Spanish, there are just so many ways of saying hammer. Every country has like
Mm.
at least two. So How do you teach these? How do you move these flows? So again, areas where you can extract the answer from a system are amazing for a conversational AI. Areas where you use more knowledge are more challenging, and they require you having a very, very strong knowledge base, which
Mm.
is challenging for most companies.
Yeah, and a lot of knowledge bases. I think they're undervalued definitely from a kind of like a data standpoint, being a repository for content for conversational AI. However, a lot of the knowledge bases that I've seen have been not written in a way that is digestible from a chatbot. So there's massaging that needs to be done. But then, as you said, sometimes you'll hear questions for the first time because it might be that the knowledge base that you have has been built up over, based on the assumptions of the people that built it, and everyone starts, excuse me, trying to do the right thing and then has done the right thing and done a good job so far. But when you put something in the wild and anyone can ask it anything, it's quite often that, that question of what's the best thing to secure a nail could be a hammer, but it could be a different type of hammer. It could be a different certain type of nail, depending on what material you want to hammer it into and what you want to try and hammer it, what you want to try and nail it to. So there's so much complexity that a human on the phone would just kind of, with some knowledge, work out. But a lot of this stuff hasn't ever been codified at the enterprise level before. I'm wondering, did you have to do anything in particular to, take data that you already have and make it fit for consumption in a conversational interface?
Um, yeah, what we are working on is trying to get a very grasp on the intent on the question, and then ask clarifying questions. So we
Hmm.
put people through a flow, right? And for example, it depends on the channel. But if you're doing it in chat, this is a little bit easier, right? Because you can limit the answers. So for example, somebody asks, okay, what would be the best way to hang a picture, right? So what you can do, it's like you can understand the intent as hanging a picture, and then you can ask clarifying question. What's your wall made of? And then you give them the options like drywall, brick, blah blah blah. And as they choose, you take them down more of a decision tree than just
Mm.
trying to go conversationally. That seems to have been working better for us. Bring some more structure into the unstructured parts, and then in the areas again where they are already structured, like where's my order, just connect with our systems and flat out give you the answer
Mm.
immediately.
Mm. That makes sense. Yeah. So you're dealing with the breadth of language from the outset, but as soon as you recognize that initial intent, you then scope the conversation and narrow it down to confined options.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. What was the I've been reading a lot recently. There's been quite a few studies that have been released over the last couple of weeks, which is indicating that a lot of enterprises, not necessarily specific to conversational AI, but in general, the things that they're aiming to do all center around trying to improve customer experience. You mentioned there at the beginning that, Stanley Black and Decker is wanting to move from being a tool merchant, for want of a better word, into being a brand that is building relationships with people, helping people in their journey, helping providing that kind of customer experience and building those relationships and being helpful. Was that the primary kind of drivers for exploring this kind of technology? Was it all customer experience based, or was there anything else that you were trying to either learn or get out of it?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is drive efficiencies and expand the reach, right? There are so many touch points in the customer journey. How are you in every customer journey, in a way that it's seamless, that it's accessible, right? And quite honestly, it is very hard and expensive to do it just using humans. So AI has a lot of promise to help you deliver those services in a cost efficient way, but also in a very fast way.
Mm, absolutely. And so you have prior experience with conversational AI prior to Stanley Black and Decker. Um, where did that come from? When did you first kind of take an interest in chatbots and conversational AI and that kind of stuff?
So my first experience happened many years ago. I was working in mostly an agency that would do digital transformation, and we had a customer that was a telecommunication company, and it was absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of people calling and chatting and texting, and we saw the conversational AI as a very cool idea into how to engage. And we created, probably until today, it's my favorite bot. This company happened to have a dog that was part of all the commercials and everything. And what we did was, instead of manning our chat bot with like a bot as itself, we made the dog the star. So whenever you would be calling or chatting, you would be chatting with this character that it was the dog, and all
Mm.
the answers from the bot were helpful, were driving, were transactional, but it was like talking with the dog, right? And again, this character was very very famous. So the dog would bark and like send you like wiggling tail things when he had done a good job, and things like that. So it made the experience not only useful but a lot of fun for the people, right? They obviously knew they were not talking with a dog, but it created like this suspension of reality where the dog was helping you, and if you ever were transferred to a human, it felt like a fun experience for them. And that was the first time that I was involved with a conversational AI project. Again, this was
Mm.
like probably 10 years ago. This area has progressed so much from what we could do in the past, but these basic principles of humanizing the experience and making it fun stuck with me, and ever since I've been a big fan and proponent of using conversational AI.
Mm. It's interesting because that example is using kind of personality design to and taking it to the real edge, taking the dog character, building the whole assistant around that dog character. And I think that, like, it seems novel, but what it does is it helps in a bunch of areas. Like in that instance, it helps kind of dehumanize the experience a bit. So you're managing expectations. So you're not saying that you're not trying to pass it off as you're talking to a human. You're being quite blatant about the fact that this isn't a human. And so if there is any issues, people will be just like, well, it's just the dog, like there's no real kind of high expectations kind of thing. And you leave a lot of room for those kind of surprise and delight moments where the dog's helpful and solves the customer's problem, and it's kind of like being quirky with it and stuff like that, and you leave a load of room to really enhance the customer experience. And like over the last, I don't know, 5 years even, there's been some examples of that. Domino's had the Dom bot, and they did something in Alexa which was quite quirky. There's been a couple of others. I think there's one in the UK called Compare the Market, and their mascot is a meerkat, and they've created this kind of like meerkat bot. I can't remember what it's called now, Sergei bot, something like that. So there's evidence of it happening, but not happening quite as much as it should. I think people undervalue the personality design aspect of it.
I think it's kind of difficult because not every company has a character or something that can be used, right? um, the first rule is that you need to be true to who you are as you communicate, where you're doing a bot or whatever. So a lot of these companies would not have this character. If you have the character and you can leverage this character to kind of give a personality to your bot, that's amazing, and it creates amazing results. If you don't have it, then you start thinking, should I create this character and then give the character the personality that my brand should have, or do I just use the bot as an extension of my customer support team and make it more, for lack of a better name, I would say transactional, kind
Mm,
of like pin it as like, hey, this is more efficient. I can help you in a much more efficient way that an agent could do, and then go there. No, it really depends. I believe it's very personal. Each brand will have to make the call.
mm,
But if you have the opportunity to leverage an asset, a character that you already have, and embed this personality into the bot, the difference and the results will be great.
Yeah, it reminds me. I was just trying to search there. There's a bank, and I can't remember what it's called. I was looking at it the other week. There's a digital bank, and what it does is it basically it kind of aggregates your other banks. So, like, let's say, for example, if you've got like two bank accounts, this bank would be a layer on top, and it would just kind of read into your accounts and stuff. And basically, it is a conversation first bank. And if you go to the homepage of their website, the first bit on the homepage is a image of the chatbot, and it says something like, I can't remember what it is, but it's something like, if you keep spending so much money on takeaways, I'm gonna have to subscribe you to a gym membership or something mad like that. Something really quirky.
Yeah,
Which is, so they've obviously taken what is a bit of a cutting edge style brand and wrapped the character around it. But there's examples of like Capital One with Eno, where it's a bank, traditional bank as well. Probably perceived as such as well. Yet they've created Eno, which is a character in and of itself, which is their front face assistant, and then that's the identity of their assistant across all their different channels. So I suppose you're right. Yeah, obviously it depends on the brand, but there's some really good examples of where even brands who you wouldn't think would have real personality in their assistants can craft it if they do it right.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. Interesting. So when we spoke last time, you were talking about the first time that you build a chatbot, you're likely to build it twice. And I mentioned that good friend of mine, David Law, who ex BBC, ex Skyscanner, he's now at a consultancy called Oracle, and he kind of built a chatbot for Skyscanner really early on. Was one of the first skills published in the Alexa skill store, and it was really funny when you mentioned that, because that's essentially the line that he always says. All the presentations he gives and stuff like that, he always says that you will end up building your first bot twice. And a few people have probably been through that, but I'm wondering if you can share your perspectives on why that can be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first time you're doing it, you don't really know what you're doing because I mean, there's more and more experience on the bots, but how is this bot going to really take part in your conversation strategy? How is that going to work? Most likely, the pre ideas that you have are so embedded in your internal knowledge of the company and your own views on how people will work. And when you send the bot into the wild, you're going to realize that you probably covered 2-3% of the cases and would have to go and change and redo things. In Stanley Black and Decker, first time we launched a bot, we were really thinking that it's going to be about after sales. And the reality is that when we launched it, most of the questions were related to pre-sales. And it had never
Mm.
we had never thought about it. We saw that people go to our channel partners to get those answers, but they actually really wanted to get the answers from us. And it makes sense because we are manufacturing the tools. We know
Mm.
much more about tools probably than any hardware store would know that sells thousands of SKUs. We do tools. So um, that was a big realization on this one. We went back and had to adapt. The first time I did this chatbot, as I was telling you, for this telco, we were very transactional. We thought that people just wanted to go and get like the answer, hey, how much money do I have in my line? This was in Latin America, so a lot of the phone lines have like these prepay credit, and people wanted to know. We thought it was going to be very transactional, and we kind of, as a joke, created the character, the bot based on the character. But then we realized that what people were actually really doing was to go and talk with the dog, right? They really wanted to talk with the character, so we had to redo it. So 60% of the questions we realized were more about people enjoying having a conversation with a character they knew from TV. Every time you go, and this is very important, that you build this flexibility in your bot as you are creating it, because you need to be able to go wherever it takes you, right? And
Mm.
most likely, it's not going to be where you thought originally that it was going to take you.
Hmm. It's interesting, isn't it? Because with something like the web or mobile, you've got teams of people who, I mean, if they're doing it well, they'll definitely do research initially. They'll definitely have informed decisions that they bring into a project. Um, but then there's a period where they'll kind of create something. And again, if they're doing it well, they'll test it. They'll get people involved. They'll get customers involved. They'll do some testing, and they'll get feedback and stuff like that. But I think a lot of what makes I suppose, a design project unique for visual graphical user interfaces is that when it's kind of live, you never really know how good it is necessarily. They always say that good design is hidden and you can't really tell a well-designed website and stuff like that. But like even if you're using Google Analytics and stuff to monitor where people are clicking and monitoring your conversion rates and stuff, you still don't really know why somebody's on that page. You don't really know exactly specifically the reason because they click a link. It might be that because what's on that page is wrong and they think that more information is over here, or it might be because they've got an intent that they want to go and buy that product or whatever it might be. There's a lot of information lost, and so you can go live with a website, you can debate the design all day long, and you can still go live with a bunch of assumptions and never really find out whether those assumptions hold. Whereas with conversational AI, the first time you press the button to go live, all of your assumptions are immediately tested. So it's a unique technology type, isn't it, in that respect?
I think that there are a lot of unique elements. One thing that go across the board where you're designing a website and you're focusing on the UX is that successful companies are those that can create many iterations of a product really fast. Um, Talking about this, I was in a meeting a few months ago, and I don't know the numbers. Don't quote me on the numbers, but just to give you an idea, the guys from Google were talking about how many updates they push per day, and it was an insane number. It was, I don't know, thousands of pushes into
Mm,
improving what they are doing. And you would go with some of the companies that were there would be updating once a year, you know, and you could totally tell the difference that successful companies are those that are complete iterating one time over the next time, small changes, but making sure that they are continuously improving what they are doing, and that builds the success. Now this is especially true into conversational AI, right? um, if you think that you can create these flows, throw them in the wild, and then come back next year, you will not, you most likely will not be successful. You will be surprised. um, when you create a conversational AI, the logic is that you are doing it to save budget, to be more efficient, and flat out make it easier. The reality is that conversational AI, it's a big complex challenge, that if you are going to launch a conversational AI and you think and you are going to do it well, it requires a lot of resources, it requires a lot of thinking, and it requires a lot of alignment with your goals, and a very deep understanding of what do you want to do, and a commitment to iterating. You know, I don't know how many changes we push a week, but we divide it in use cases, and we realize that from what we believe that a use case will do, once we launch it, the amount of iterations in that very same use case, it would just blow your mind, right?
mm,
So when whatever you are doing, I would really suggest that you look into how can you very dynamically own it, and being able to iterate, and every day push 3, 4, 5 commits. Make sure that every day this gets better. Otherwise, the results will be far from helpful. It might really be a deviation from creating a great customer experience, and your users will see it more as you blocking the access to your people, and it's going to become more of an obstacle than an enabler.
That's very interesting because I suppose organizations that have already got that culture and have built that culture into web and mobile are going to fare a bit easier. Whereas hearing you say that, and if I'm an organization that is a little bit more traditional, maybe it's a bit more waterfall in how they go about their projects and stuff like that, it's easier said than done, isn't it, to develop that kind of culture? I wonder if there's anything that you've learned over the years to encourage that kind of culture? Like, did that culture exist in Stanley Black and Decker before you arrived in this kind of stuff? Like, how do you go about encouraging that kind of culture?
I believe it's a change from leadership. When I joined the company, the president of the company at the time, he already had this vision and this idea of change and bringing more agility. I think that the company itself was realizing that we really needed to be more agile. Now, Stanley Black and Decker, it's 189 years old, so obviously there's a lot of corporate knowledge on how things should be done that has been extremely challenged in the last 10 years in the speed that things need to move. So I would say that, well, in many areas, we have changed and became a much more agile organization. We're constantly working and have teams looking in how can we be even more agile and more agile. And we know that we still have ways to go. In customer experience, we still understand that we need to be more agile, and we need to be able to be more flexible and deliver more. It is a constant change. It is a constant change. I would say that probably one of the areas more challenging when you are dealing with change management in a little bit older organizations is understanding that you don't need to be perfect. You need to have like 80%, launch with 80%, and understand that your second iteration will deal not only with the 20% you were missed, but redoing the other 80% and then continuously improve. And that requires a lot of changes. In some areas it's absolutely possible to do. In some other areas it's a little bit more difficult. But again, this ability to iterate in very accelerated cycles, I believe is what separates very successful companies from not so successful companies today.
Mm. It's having the confidence and the risk profile that would enable you to go with something that is 80% there. Because a lot of companies, if they're not familiar with agile thinking and practices, then and they're not aware that, 80% of users use 20% of the features and things like that. And the real importance on day one is to get those 20% of the features finished and good enough. Um, it's quite a difficult, or it can be a case of requiring constant kind of ongoing stakeholder management, can't it? I've been in programs in the past where we've had this approach to digital service provision, not on the conversational AI side, although I've got stories there as well, but having that approach and at first kickoff meeting, this is all that we're talking about basically, is that this is the way that we're working, this is the principles and philosophy. What we're trying to do is get to, like, what is the imperative stuff that we need to make happen. But 3 weeks later, it's, well, can we just put that in there? We need that in there. We need this in there. So it's a constant massaging of stakeholders, which is that, well, is that part of the 80% or 20%? Is that the must-have requirements? It's kind of like this constant sort of, ongoing effort, I would say. At what point does it become, for those who are kind of just going through this, hearing you speak about the importance of doing this for conversational AI, maybe they have a chatbot that's draining a little bit, or they don't have one, but they're looking at it, but they don't have that kind of culture. You know, at what point is there a point where it starts clicking and those stakeholders get it, or is it a case of you constantly have to do a lot of stakeholder management to keep people understanding that this thing isn't perfect, but what we want to try and do is deliver as much value as we can, and we'll get to perfection over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, if you are in a position where you are constantly having to manage your key stakeholders, most likely you are not delivering value, right? And if there's something or there's a position where you don't want to be, it's in not adding value. I believe that time to value is one of the most important metrics as you are going to launch a new project. Now, what does value mean? That's where you go evolving. But you need to deliver value as soon as possible in the project. And for example, in our case, you can say, okay, right now I realize that I have 30% of my interactions are somebody that whose product stopped working and it's under warranty. And that would be kind of an easier case for us to go and leverage conversational AI. And we're going to go and leverage the AI here. So what we're going to do is our value, or the value that we're going to bring, is that after X amount of weeks of work, we're going to automate X percentage of the calls, which will free the time for our agents to go and work on these other cases that would bring more value, right? Now, you define the problem and the value that you are bringing, and this is very specific, and it's something that you can execute. Now, you need to have a vision on where are you going, right? My vision is that, I don't know, somebody anywhere in the world would grab a phone and my conversational AI will tell this person immediately without even listening to the question, whatever he wants to know. And that's a vision, right? But the value is what you define that you're going to do so the stakeholders understand what can they expect. Because if that is not clearly defined, then and you say, hey, I'm going to create a conversational AI and it's going to solve all the problems in the world. It sounds ludicrous now, but it was my experience at the early time. I met with this vendor and they told me that, and keep in mind, I'm not an expert on AI, so sometimes it's hard to understand what are really the boundaries of the technology.
Hmm.
They told me that their system could grab all the manuals that we had already printed, scan them, read the words, translate them to every language, and use advanced learning to create relations. So they were going to scan all the manuals, and in a month we'll have like the smartest data sets that you imagine. Okay, I I believe that that was something that could be done. It was far from our reality, and the way that I had aligned value and expressed what we were going to do, it's like pretty much in 2 months I was going to come with this amazing knowledge base on, and the bot was going to be able to answer all these questions that pretty much, in my mind, were like whatever anybody asks, we'll be able to answer. So obviously, the alignment and the expectation and the value that I said in the stakeholders was that 2 months later, 4 months later, whenever we came, we were far from what we had promised.
Hmm.
So it was a mistake. It's one of these moments where you have to acknowledge that you made a mistake, explain everybody what's the mistake, what's the course of correcting, what are you going to do, and make sure that you put things that the value is something that you can achieve. You can have a vision on what you're going to do, and you're going to take many different steps to achieve that vision. But you need to make sure that your stakeholders are receiving value. I I am not aware of any company where they give you 5 years of running leeway or 10 years until you bring value to the table, right? Most companies are a little bit more short-sighted in the time to value, and that's why, in transformation you always try to have a portfolio of success or of projects so you can administrate. Some things are going to happen like 3 years from now. How do I break down so every 2 weeks or 1 month or whatever is the frequency you can deliver value? What I always tell my teams is like, we need to think big but execute small,
Hmm.
and make sure that if we have this big dream for something we're going to do in 3 years, we need to make sure that we understand every 2 weeks where are we going to be and what is the value that this iteration is going to bring, what's the value on the next iteration. And when I say you build 80% of it, you don't wait for for it to be perfect is because there are always things that people will be asking and try to add into your project. You want to give yourself the flexibility to say, okay, we're going to be iterating. This is what fits into this iteration. All these amazing ideas will fit in iteration 3, 4, 5. Just don't wait. Just don't wait to have everything perfect, because it will never be perfect. Okay. And the 80%, it's just a way of speaking. What I'm trying to say is just, you'll never have things perfect. There will always be corrections, improvements that you need to do. So make sure that while you are delivering on the value you promise, make sure that you give yourself room for improvement and understand that things continue improving all the time, right? I mean, we're on iPhone 13, right? From iPhone 1 to 13, how many improvements happen, right? So you can argue that if your vision is what the iPhone 2 would do, you can say that iPhone 1 was 80% of the product, right?
Mm,
That's what I'm referring to, 80% of the product. I'm not saying something that would solve 80% of the value. You need to deliver on the value you promise, but give
right.
yourself room to continue growing your project, your product, whatever you're doing.
I'm with you. Interesting. That's very good. Yeah, that is wicked. So, what would you say is the biggest lesson that others can apply from either from what we've spoke about already or generally from your experience? We've spoke about a lot of things. We spoke about customer experience and changing the ethos of a company to become more customer centric and build relationships with customers. We've talked a lot about kind of like conversational AI applications and how that is helping increase improve customer service and helping you scale and manage your costs and things like that. And we've also spoke a lot about internal culture transformation, change management, that kind of stuff. um is there any kind of like, if you were to single out a single thing that is either the biggest lesson that you've learned or the biggest pointer you would say for teams either getting started or trying to scale, what would it be?
I would say the first thing, it's understand value, right? And what is perceived as the value that they are going to get for all your key stakeholders in what you are doing. And once you understand that, there's a saying that goes, under promise, over deliver. Always under promise and over deliver. Because you need to build trust into what you're doing. The longer, the bigger the project it is, the more trust you need in people, that to keep them engaged, to keep them with faith, giving you resources until you get to the desired outcome, right? And the way of keeping trust is by delivering. It is very hard for somebody to wait 2 years to see the result of something they invested on, or that they are working on. So try to make sure that you always under promise, you over deliver, and you do this in stages. If you have this huge idea on what's going to be in 3 years, make it so that in a few months you can show value, right? It will be a little bit of value, and then you add to that little bit of value, and then you go building on this vision. It's going to help you maintain the alignment that you need. That's going to help you keep the main stakeholders excited and aligned, and supporting the vision of what you are building.
Fantastic. Orlando, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you very
It's
much. It's been absolutely fantastic.
been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Nice one. And thank you all for joining. And please do go to VUX.world/Cognigy, COGNIGY, to join me on Thursday for this exclusive CX Maturity workshop. And there's also one on September the 1st as well, if you cannot make this Thursday. So thank you again, Orlando. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you tomorrow when we're chatting to Braden Ream, CEO of VoiceFlow, about conversation design maturity. So a lot of conversations about maturity going on these days. We'll see you there.